Welcome everyone. Hi. So we're gonna get started. My name is Laura. You might have joined me for the webinar last week. Again, I can't see you, but I trust that you're there and looking forward to sharing with you today and being in your homes virtually. So I'm gonna do, this is photography and the family part 2. I'm gonna do some slides. So we'll jump right into that. Let's give it like 1 minute just in case anyone pops in. It's morning over here. I'm in New York. Let's see. So welcome to Photography and the Family Part 2, Creating Photo Albums. Again, my name is Laura. If you joined us last week, then that's wonderful. This will just build on last week's webinar. But if you were not available last week and this is your first time coming to one of my webinars, no problem. The content's going to be different, so you don't need to have come last time. But welcome back if you were here before. So about me, I'm an artist and art therapist based in New York City in the United States. I have about 5 years experience with youth with disabilities, working in art museums and schools, worked at the Children's Museum of the Arts, and I work a lot in community spaces. I've been a photographer for more than a decade, thus focusing a little bit on photo. A lot of art therapists don't do a lot of work with photo, but it's really powerful medium I think that we all have access to, especially in today's day and age with the excessive amount of technology we all have. And lastly, I believe art is for everyone, and we can use art every day to connect with each other. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm putting this webinar together, is I'm thinking about what are the ways that you can bring art into your everyday life to connect with your child, with your family, for your children to connect with their siblings, their friends, whatever the connection is that particular day. But so thinking about those kinds of moments we can make with art. So for today's webinar, just to go over what we'll look at today. So we're gonna discuss materials that you will need. It's all basic stuff that you probably have in your house. We're gonna talk about photo albums and scrapbooking basics. I'll go into those terms and how I might use them. We're going to talk about making basic books in your PDF. I'm not sure if you get it before or after, but in your PDF, there's just some basic DIY, just steps to make some little booklets that then you can fill in with your child. And we're going to do some scrapbooking prompts to get started, for you to get started with, to get going with this art making. And at any time during the webinar, please ask any questions. If you have a question about accessibility, how you might adapt a project to fit your particular child, your particular family, or just really any questions you might have, please put them in the chat box. There's 20 minutes at the end when I can answer any questions you have. So don't be shy. No question's too big or too small. It will be, really fun to be able to answer your questions. So that's what I'm here for. It's just to support you. So let me know. So as we dive in, let's talk about materials that you'll need for the projects that I'm going to show you. So all of the materials are very simple. The main one is you need paper. So all of today's projects, common household materials. So the main one is you need paper. You can use glue, tape, scissors, crayons or markers, any kind of like colorful drawing device. And then you'll also need your printed photographs. I said use photocopies, which is really important. So when you're working with photos, one of the coolest things, one of the best things about photos is that we can print them out 100 times. We have a digital version of a photo and we can recreate it over and over and over again. And so that provides for a lot of exploration and experimentation for your child and for you, because you sort of can never mess up. You can just work with a photo, do one thing with it, glue it here, create a frame, whatever it is you want to do with it, cut it out, color on it, and then you can print out an exact copy again. So I really want to encourage you to work with photocopies, not, you know, irreplaceable photographs, so that you can have that chance to really explore and experiment. So thinking about photos, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I just want you to think about them for yourself. We make photographs all the time. At least in my life, I know I make photographs all the time. I have my phone with me. I'm constantly snapping pictures. I'm also a photographer, so I take more deliberate photos too, but I'm also just taking photos of stuff all the time, you know, things I see in the world on my phone, and I might not even really be thinking about it. I might take pictures of my friends, my loved ones, and then they just sort of get stored away in my phone. So I want you to think about these questions for yourself. Do you display your photographs after you take them? Do you post them online? I know I do. I post a lot of photos online. Do you print them out? I think printing them out has become sort of old school. We don't always get around to printing out our photos. And we take so many now that we have digital storage capacities and our phones and these kinds of digital cameras that are with us all the time. It becomes harder to print our photographs for some people. Do you make a photo album of them? You know, I can remember growing up and always having photo albums of all of our printed photographs, but nowadays things are really digital. So I don't always print out my photos. I don't always make photo albums, but it's a very nostalgic experience. And lastly, what does it look like to go back and view your images? Does it mean scrolling through your phone? Does it mean going through social media? Does it mean looking through your computer files? Does it mean looking at the photos on your wall? You know, what are the ways that you go back and look at your photos? What is that experience? Is it purposeful? Is it accidental? You just kind of, you know, end up on in your phone or something. You just end up seeing your images again. What does it look like to really go back and look at your photos? So today we're going to focus a little bit on like photo albums, this idea of a book of photographs. So when we're talking about photo albums, it's first of all an easy way to store, display, and be creative with a lot of photographs. If you think about a framed photo, you know, that's one photo on the wall. If you think about a photo album, it's like there could be sort of an infinite amount of photos within that photo album. So you can really combine a large amount of pictures. And in today's age, we produce a lot of pictures. So it's pretty useful to be able to think about them as a, you know, a whole in this way. And also photo albums really mimic books. I think that children can really understand the narrative possibilities within a photo album because it reminds them of a book. It is a book. It reminds them of these things that they're engaging with anyway. You know, picture books they're reading, they understand the idea of a story. So why not, it translates really well for a child to just pick up a photo album and just start flipping through it, and they understand that it's like a story. I think that it really generates a creativity and an excitement and a curiosity because in some ways it's very familiar. And then photo albums can be very straightforward. So just photographs, like in this example photo. It's just photos on a page. Or photo albums can be very decorative and very creative. And for that, we're going to use the term scrapbook. I don't know if you've heard the term scrapbook before, if you use that term, but we're going to go over what scrapbooking means, and that's sort of going to be a little bit of our focus, is combining the idea of a photo album with a scrapbook. So, scrapbooking. Scrapbooks are blank books that you fill with pictures, drawings, clippings, and memories. So whereas a photo album might just be photos, the scrapbook you can fill with sort of like decorations. You can add more layers to it. You think about it a little more creatively. You're wondering, oh, if I put this photo down, maybe I'll add some color, maybe I'll add some stickers, maybe I'll add, draw around it or write in. Scrapbooks just combine more. There's like more layers, more texture, more color. An alternate term that people use within the scrapbooking world, because it's kind of a popular craft, an alternate term is memory keeping. So that's really beautiful, right? It just means I'm taking my memories, my moments, and collecting them. I'm keeping them safe. And in scrapbooking, the focus is on storytelling. So this is really key as well. It ties into what I was talking about earlier. With scrapbooking, you're really talking about storytelling. What is the story that I can create here in this moment with what I have, with these photos, with whatever you're working with at that time? So a scrapbook page is essentially a collage. You might know the term collage. It's not super important to know these terms, scrapbook, collage. You can still create without these words, but I want to give them to you in case you want to do your own research, or maybe you have connections already to these activities. You might make collages already. You might make scrapbooks. That way you can connect with these words and either use them for further research or understand better how it is what you're already doing with your child. So collage is just the act of combining many small pieces into one new piece. It's usually pieces of paper. This is an example image of a collage. It's just like ripped up little pieces of paper, photo, tissue paper, foil, different textures, just glued all on to like a new piece of paper. And that's a collage. So when you think about a scrapbook, it's a book that's sort of made up of many pages of these collages, essentially. So scrapbooking together, it's kind of like, why scrapbook, right? Scrapbooking together supports children to look at their personal experiences as stories that they can control, understand, and share, right? So when you're scrapbooking with your child, you're really working on these kinds of motivations. Like you're working on helping your child understand their own universe, their own life, and their little day-to-day experiences. So, scrapbooking tips. So projects should have a beginning and an end. This is a pretty big one. So when we're creating with our child, we want them to feel accomplished, and we want to feel accomplished too, right, as adults. So projects should really have a beginning and an end. Do something really manageable, something that you can actually start and finish. And by that I mean like your theme, your idea that you're working on could be something like a day. You could say, we're going to scrapbook Tuesday. We're going to scrapbook this last Tuesday that happened. And we're going to think about how the day started, and we're going to think about how the day ended. We're going to think about all the things in between, and we're going to create, art about that day. It doesn't, it could be something specific. It could be, oh, it's grandma's birthday, and, we're going to scrapbook about grandma's birthday. So we're going to talk about how that day started. We're going to talk about all the preparations we did, and we're going to talk about, the celebration at the end. So it could be anything, but just create a start and a finish for your idea. so that it is not open-ended and like never ending. Because if you say, oh, I'm just going to start a scrapbook and then, you know, add to it all the time, it just, you don't have that feeling of really completing something and really accomplishing something. And that's really especially important for children. You know, they want to feel like they've accomplished something, that they have created a whole work. So just really, you know, focus on that beginning and that end. And when you're doing it, listen and look for what's meaningful in your life right now. Right now, we're stuck at home. We're in quarantine. There's a pandemic. There's safety concerns. Our lives can look really different, and they can feel really repetitive, but there's still meaningful moments, even within our daily routines, or, you know, getting through our days. So listen and look for what's meaningful in your life right now. You can make a scrapbook about your Monday with your child. You can make a scrapbook about your week or your mornings, or, you know, what life in the pandemic looks like for you right now. It doesn't have to be something, it doesn't have to be a grand event. You can keep these memories about these really everyday activities, and it's still really useful and really special and helpful for children to reflect on those daily experiences. Play around with your creativity on the page. You know, some part of scrapbooking is kind of organizing your photos, but when you're working with your child, especially young children, I would say just be creative. Let them go for it. They can't mess up the photos, because even if they, you know, draw on the photos or they mess them up, there's another photocopy. It's not really messed up, right? Just let them be creative. And practice your own creativity too. You will learn more about what is important to you, to your child, and to your family through this activity of looking back, looking at your days together, and really creating those memories on the page together. So we're ready to start thinking about making our scrapbooks. So first, we need a book, which will be the base of our photo album, our scrapbook. So I'm going to talk through a couple ways that you can make really simple books at home to begin filling. So making the book can be part of the craft. That's part of the art project. It can be really fun to make a book. You can make these books for other reasons. It doesn't have to be for scrapbooking. Your child can just, you know, these can be coloring books. These can be notebooks. They can be whatever. Especially for young children, it's really fun to create a book and then just fill it. So this is truly the simplest book you could make. You may have already made this book before. You may have imagined that you would make this book before, because it is very simple. If you have a stapler and paper, you can make this one. Truly doesn't get any simpler than this. You know, you just are full instructions in the PDF, by the way. I just want to let you know, full instructions in the PDF, but it's just, you know, you're folding paper in half and you're stapling it along a spine. And then you fold in the spine just to help with page turning. But that's, you know, the simplest book you can make. The next book that I'm going to show you is a little bit more complicated. It's not, there's just more steps and a little bit more technicality to it, but it is ultimately quite simple. And again, full instructions are in the PDF. I don't want to focus too long on the technicality of the books, because the instructions are available to you. So the next one, so the first one, book with staples. This other option, calling book without staples. So if you don't have a stapler, or you just want to, you know, a different way of making a book, this one, you will do a little bit, the difference is this one requires a little bit of measuring and cutting. And then the book just sort of folds together. I'm going to kind of quickly go through this because you have the instructions. But essentially, this book is made with two kinds of pages. You measure out 5 centimeters from the top of the page. You fold your pages in half. You measure out 5 centimeters from the top of the page, 5 centimeters from the bottom of the page. On one of those pages, you cut out in between those measurements. And on the rest of those pages, however many other ones you want, you cut out from the top and from the bottom of those 5 centimeters. And then you're going to, the pages are going to fit together like a puzzle. So it's actually really fun the way that this book comes together, especially for older kids. They can help you with the measuring, and they can help with the cutting if they're figuring out their, you know, scissor skills, and working on, like, you know, those motor skills. And then what happens is you take the pages with the outer slits, the outer like slices, you roll it, and it's gonna go in between, it's gonna go into the page that has the center slice. Kind of hard to do this with one hand. I need to focus on it. But it's really fun the way that it's sort of just, it looks kind of wild at first, and then as you fold the pages out, it suddenly becomes a perfect book, and it's all connected without any more effort. It's just all together. So this one's really fun for older kids. They can feel a little more technical about it, and the way that it sort of fits like a puzzle is really nice. It's sort of satisfying when it all comes together. So it seems a little bit complicated, but I promise you, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's just sort of hard to explain, but the instructions are there. So that's why I wanted to show you sort of briefly to prove that it is possible. It is simpler than it seems. So the last kind of book that we're going to talk about, before getting into the, you know, more fun project part, is binder books. So if you have a binder, like a 3-ring binder, like in this photo, you can use that as your book. And then an interesting thing about that is you could work one page at a time. So you could create, instead of having a whole book and then looking forward to filling it, you could think about it as, you know, one page at a time. So today we're making a page about our favorite colors, and tomorrow we're making a page about our favorite foods. But in those pages, with those pages, we can then add them to a binder, so it can hold multiple projects. It could hold one project, but you just, you know, paste it out, however you want to do it. Excuse me. Multiple people could work on separate pages. So, you know, you could have 2 children who are working together on the same book, but they want to each do separate pages. You can add them into the binder, and that's a really nice way to work together while also getting some time working separately. And be sure to decorate the cover of your binder. So that's a big thing too. When you create these books and you're decorating them, don't forget the cover. That's a whole project unto itself. That could be a whole day. You could just create the book and then decorate the cover, and then later go back and add to it. So that's a really important part of it too, is just, you know, personalize as much of it as you can. There's a lot of art possibility within these books. So once you have your book, it's time to fill it. So this is my no-fail photo scrapbook recipe. You can do this in any way, shape, or form, and you'll get a photo scrapbook. So begin with a blank page or a book. We already know about our books and our blank pages. We talked about that. Then add color and texture. Whatever that means for your child, depending on their age, depending on what materials they like to work with, depending on what materials you have, that might mean coloring the page with crayons. It might mean painting the page. It could mean gluing down fabric, or gluing down tissue paper, these different things to just add, like, you know, background color and or texture. And then add your photos. So these are photos you might have taken with your child, ideally, or, you know, maybe even just photos you have that of your child that, you know, they want to work with, or whatever it is. Add your photos in, and then just keep going. Add more layers if you want. Draw around the photos. Add stickers or embellishments like colorful tape, or, you know, anything that you want to add. This example has, you know, these little butterflies that are, you know, these foil butterflies, these little gems along the side. There's some ribbons glued on there. So it's really whatever you have. And then the last thing is write labels or descriptions for more context. So there's no words actually on this example, but you can always just, yeah, like add labels, add descriptions, write the names of the people in the photos. If you want to ask your child, what's happening on this page? What's happening in these images? Your child will tell you something back, and you can write that down for them, especially if they're young. If they're a little older and they want to practice their own writing, you can write stuff out for them. I mean, if they want to practice their own writing, they can write it themselves, which can be nice. But yeah, just, you know, get a little more context into the scrapbooks so you know what you were thinking about at the time, because we're keeping memories, really, is what we're doing here, and we're storytelling. So those are the basics. It's about, you know, the simplest version. But let's go over some themes that you can explore with your child. So we talked about setting a beginning and an end for our scrapbook when we're doing it together. And so that beginning and that end could be anything. It could be something very basic, you know, a day in the life, a week in the life. But it could also be, you know, these different themes. So one theme that's great with kids is my family or people important to me, whichever of those, you know, feels right for you. Ask your child to either, you know, take pictures of their family, of the people important to them. They can either take those photos, or, you know, if you have those photos and you want to go through them and print them out, you can do that. And then just have children create a photo album of the people in their family or the people that they care about. And this can be really fun. You can really learn from your child, like, what they think about those people in a good way. Like, you know, what do you love about your grandma? What do you love about your best friend? What do you love about these people? And how do you want to decorate their pages? Or how do you want to put them all together or display them? It can be really nice. And then also children have sort of like a reference point, like almost like a little family tree that they can show to other people. Like for little kids or something, they might want to say, oh, look, here's my grandma, they want to show their friends. Here are these people that are important to me. These are people that make me feel loved. These are the people that I care about. Another option is my favorite things. So children, especially younger children, but I mean, really all of us, we like to talk about our favorite things. We think about what we like to do. We think about what we like to eat. What, you know, little kids, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite animal? These things are really important to us, especially when we're young. And they can be ways to learn about ourselves and to learn about other people. So, you know, if I learn what your favorite things are, then I'm learning more about you. So, you know, you can make a My Favorite Things book, and your child can make a My Favorite Things book, and you can talk about your favorite things and the ways that they're similar and the ways that they're different. So with My Favorite Things, you know, you and your child can create an album of favorite toys, favorite colors, favorite meals or activities, whatever is important to your child or whatever feels like exciting to them in the moment. It could be, you know, it could be all of these things together. It could be all of their favorites, you know, their favorite subject in school right now. Really focusing on just what's happening for them right now, because it might change. You know, your favorite food today is not your favorite food in 2 years. So if you're getting into the practice of creating these kinds of memories and scrapbooks and thinking about, you know, the current moment, then just focus on right now, and then do it again in the future and see what has changed. So, you know, these are ways that children can use these books as conversation starters to reveal what's important to them, both while they're making it with you, but also once they have their book. This is a shareable object. Like a book is something we can take around with us and show. You know, we can take it to school. We could say, hi, you know, teacher, these are my favorite things. Do you want to know more about me? So there's ways that children can share in the moment and share later. So other themes to explore. So my week or my day, we talked about this already, but yeah, create an album of a certain moment in time. Take photographs during a week or a day, combine those images in your scrapbook, explore those memories together, try to construct a narrative. You can get as concrete or creative with this as you want. I think especially with kids, like it can be fun to do like a routine book. So what does Monday look like for us? What does our week look like? You can ask your child what happens first each day and then continue in order. So like let your child lead you through their experiences. So this could be a fun activity where you could say, hey, we're gonna make a book about our routine, our daily routine. We're at home, you know, we're in quarantine, but there's still probably systems that you have in place. You know, you wake up at this time, you brush your teeth, you do these different things, you eat lunch at this time. So it can be fun with your kid, especially I feel like this part is like most fun with like younger children when they're learning about their routine. You can ask your child, what do we do first when we wake up? And then, you know, you could go around with the phone camera and you could even take a picture of like, oh, this is my toothbrush. This is what I do right when I wake up. I brush my teeth. And then, oh, I go into the kitchen and I have breakfast with my grown-up. And you can take a picture of, you know, the kitchen but let your child lead with creating that. And then it's something to refer back to, and it's something that they can feel pride over and control over because they're like, this is what I do each day. This is my, these are my experiences. This is what I accomplish every day. I do all these things. You know, I go to bed on time, or I you know, help mommy do this or that, or I help my brother or my sister. So it can be fun to do, you know, these things that seem really benign, really common, but you know, in a year, you might not be doing those things exactly the same way. So it's still really interesting to sort of keep those moments and memories and watch how they change and reflect on them later. So I want to say, don't be afraid to get silly. When you're creating your photo albums, I'm going to show you an example. So when you're creating your photo albums, especially with kids, you might just put your photos down and think, oh, this photo is just going to live here like this. But don't be afraid to be silly. You can draw all over these photos if you want. This is why I talked about using photocopies. So a little photo of a baby, you know, eating cake here can turn into this really silly photo where the babies become like super sized. There's buildings all around them, and like the baby's like this kind of like a whole nother little like fantasy creature. So you can create whole new worlds for your photos to inhabit. I think this kind of depends on your child. Some people just want to be more silly, or sometimes, you know, or even just in the moment you want to be more silly with certain things and less silly with other things. It doesn't have to be totally serious when you're scrapbooking. I don't want you to think that, you know, it has to be any kind of way. Because these are photocopies that we've, you know, printed out easily, you just explore and draw all over them if you want. There's really no harm because you can always print it out again. So, you know, don't be afraid to get silly. And then also, so the benefits to scrapbooking with your child. We've talked about, you know, we're scrapbooking, we're doing it, but what are we really working on, like emotionally or artistically with our child? So organizing the photos in creative ways can help children reflect and form a narrative about the events in their everyday lives. Like I said, it gives them more control. It gives them a chance to really consider the story of their experiences, and then to be able to share that story out with others. Photocopies allow for this endless exploration. So photos are really unique in this way, where we can just recreate them. It's not like a drawing that maybe we did once and we're not, you know, we don't want to mess it up. Certain children, you know, we don't want to mess things up. But photocopies, I can print out 5 of the same photo in this exploration. Also, saving special memories can provide comfort and joy. It's really special to feel like these moments that you have together, acknowledging them as important, even if they're really common, even if you feel like, oh, you're just, you know, together every day, you're just always eating breakfast, you know, these are things we have to do. But I think sometimes for children, these memories are really special, and looking at them as special memories, commemorating them in this way, deciding to keep them in a whole book can feel really comforting and joyful. Also having access for children, you know, they're making their own photo album. Having access to their photos in their own photo album gives children a sense of ownership and lets them share these parts of their lives with others if they wish to. So often, I know for me, I keep my photos on my phone half the time, or on the computer, and they're just in files. So if a child wanted to go through and look at, you know, my photos on my phone, I would be like, no, I need to use my phone. You can look at it for a second, but I need my phone back. So it's harder to share those photos with my child if I'm, you know, using my phone in that way. But if I print it out and that child can have those photographs, physically have them in their own little book, then they can go back and look at them whenever they want. And if you're doing projects like, you know, my family, people important to me, then your child gets to hold on to these representations of the people they care about. So if they're feeling lonely, or they're feeling loved, or they're feeling creative, or however they're feeling, they can go back and look through these images and feel connected, and like they have some ownership over their relationships and their connections to other people. And so I'm going to touch on some guiding practices really quick. So gather materials with your child. Ask for their input on colors and textures. So we're using a lot of common household materials when we're doing this work, right? But depending on your child, don't completely select for them. I would say try to have different options. If your child has a lot of difficulty making decisions, or gets overwhelmed by too many options, which a lot of us do. I mean, sometimes I get overwhelmed by too many options. Just, you know, have two. Have a yellow paper and a blue paper and say, which do you want? But that just gives them more input and more ownership over the final product if you are gathering the materials together. So choosing what you're even going to then look at and choose from. I would encourage you to include them on that process. So take and collect the photos with your child. This is sort of similar, but when you're actually getting the photographs, printing them out, whatever it might be, try to either have your child take the photos, or have them, you know, collect the photos with you so that they have say in what's there. Again, just providing more ownership and more creative control over what they're making. And you're just learning more about what they like and what they think. So if it's not possible to collect the photos with them, just give them, you know, enough selection so that they can be making the choices for themselves about what they're putting in to their scrapbooks. And in this, you know, similar vein, let your child create freely. Ask them questions, listen to the stories they tell you about what they notice in their world. It might not be the same things that you notice. And you can learn more about the way that they think about things, about the way that the things that they care about the way they conceptualize their world or consider, you know, the things in their immediate world. So it's all about sort of listening and learning. And lastly, create alongside your child. Share your own stories. We're learning from our children, but they want to learn from us too, right? So the things that you think about and you notice are also interesting. What does your scrapbook look like? What does your favorite things scrapbook look like? It's okay to do these things that our kids, that your child wants to do. These, my favorite color, like my favorite foods, why not explore your own? And then you can share with your child about yourself. So there's sort of no age maximum for creating these scrapbooks and doing these projects. So now we're gonna move into questions and answers. I'm gonna see if we've got any questions in the chat. Looks like we don't have any questions. Let me see. So I have some sort of frequently asked questions. If you come up with any questions while I'm talking, we still have, let me see what time it is. We still have 20 minutes. So this is our, questions and answer time. You can submit questions in the chat box, and I'm happy to read them and answer them. You can also do the raise hand button and ask a question live on air. But feel free to just, put it in the chat box. So one frequently asked question I have is, how would you adapt the process for older or younger kids? I would say for younger kids, I would focus, I would work on a smaller scale. The projects would be really concrete, things like favorite color, favorite foods. For older kids, it might be more about longer stories. What was our vacation like? What is it like? Just thinking a little bit bigger. And I think for younger kids, or for kids who have different skill sets, and different interests, different abilities. Like, you might think more about texture. For younger kids, it might be less about the photos. The photos are a part of it, but they're also really engaged with the feeling of different textures. So the layers that you're adding to your scrapbook, it's not just paper maybe, or it's really textured. You're adding strips of fabric, or pieces of foil or bubble wrap, or whatever it is that adds more like feeling to the book itself. That can be great for kids who either really need more sensory stimulation, more like tactile stimulation, or just for like younger children, because they're like more, they're such like physical learners, and having a really interesting like sensory experience can be more engaging. So that's one way. I think for older kids, it's just in general, give them more ownership. Maybe let them come up with the idea, talk through the different ideas that maybe I've shared here. Talk about the idea of having a beginning and an end, and then come up with some ideas together. So older kids can really brainstorm a little bit about what they actually want to scrapbook about, what they want their photo album scrapbook to contain. So, younger kids or kids who need more structure, it's just helpful to have a theme pre-made. You know what you're gonna do, and you just give it to them, and they can work within that theme. But for older kids, or kids who just, are looking for more complex activities, they want to push themselves, or, just thinking differently, just give them more control. Think about the themes, but let them come up with their own, I would say. So, hold on, I'm actually gonna unshare my screen really quick, because sorry, I just wanted to unshare my screen just in case any questions come in so I could see them better. So another question I have is, how to do this activity, how can you adapt this activity for multiple children or like a whole family doing it together? So I would say for multiple children, I mean, step one, I mean, the easiest thing is you could maybe say, oh, we'll do 2 separate books. And you can totally personalize those to the separate, like your 2 children. But the other option is using the binder method. So with the binder, you're working on separate pages, and then you're able to combine them in a binder afterwards. So for children, it can be hard for any of us. Sometimes when we're making our artwork or we're being creative, we don't really want to share the space. We need our own page to really like be free and creative within that page. So it can be hard to like want to share space when we're working. So a great way to both work separately but also together is to start separate and then come together. So you're working on 2 separate pages, maybe you're in conversation with each other while you're working, but you each have your own paper, you're each working on a separate page, and then they get to come together in a book. It's actually a really lovely family project if each family member could create a page, and then you could combine it in a binder, because it's really a representation too of what a family is, which is these different people with different creativities, different ideas, but they're all connected. So, you know, putting it all together into this binder and letting all of these pages, which represent each of us, each of your family members, into one binder can be a really lovely way to symbolize a family and to think of yourselves as these separate people who are infinitely connected in this way. So another question. Oh, what kind of prints of the photos should you get? So I've said over and over, you know, photocopies, we can reproduce them over and over again. That's a big benefit. But then how are we printing out our photos? So it's a good question. There's different ways to do it. You can send your photos away to like a photo print service or a photo lab, whatever you have either in your neighborhood or online. And they'll print out your photos for you really nicely. It'll be on like thick paper, right? It'll be like glossy and it'll come back to you. But so that's one option, and it can vary on the price depending where you are, what service you use. But that's one option. Another option is if you just have a document printer at home, like just a regular black and white style like document printer, you can just print your photos out that way. I would say it depends on your child. It depends on you. It depends on how much money you want to spend, really, because it can be very, very cheap, or it can be more if you're looking for nicer photographs. But just printing them out at home is plenty for most children, especially for younger kids. They're going to draw on it. They're going to cut it out. They're going to be messy with it, maybe. And the photo, and then they might want to, you know, they might want to do like a lot of photos. So you don't want to be too fussy with it necessarily. It's really up to you. But I would say with younger kids in particular, they go through materials so quickly and they're just exploring. All children, I mean, we're all exploring, but the younger you are, the more it's about just working with the materials, feeling them out, and then kind of moving on to the next fun thing. So don't spend too much time or money, depending on, you know, the age of your child, how you feel they're going to respond to the photos, as long as you can print them out in some way. I would say the biggest thing is just, you know, getting your photos physical, getting them out onto paper at all is pretty magical for kids. And it's something we kind of take for granted, maybe because it's not done so much anymore, or we don't think about it as being very special. But I know for me, you know, most of my photos don't get printed anymore. So if I print out a photo, it does feel really magical to have it on a piece of paper, to feel it physically in my hands. And for young kids, that object, turning that digital thing into an object is really exciting. So just, you know, get it out one way or another. Let's see what other questions. So the other thing, I can talk a little bit about the PDF. The PDF has the book examples, which we talked about. And in the PDF, I also mentioned the idea of just doing collages. So we're talking about these scrapbooks, but you also don't have to make a full book. I think it's really exciting and fun to make a book, and children can really relate to it. But if you want to just do like a one-page collage with your photos, that's also totally fine. I think that for kids with different disabilities, sometimes communication can be a real barrier or a challenge for children. And creating a collage or a book about certain things that are important to your child can actually be a form of communication for them. So the way I'm imagining this is your child might create a book about their favorite things. They might create a book about their friends. They might create a collage page that has, you know, their family on it and like photos of them. And this could be a way for your child when they're out in the world, when they're at school, when they're with their friends, to be able to show parts of themselves to these other people. So to be able to show their teacher, this is my dog or cat or best friend, or to be able to talk about these things with a visual that they can like go through, point to, for children who maybe have trouble communicating otherwise, or getting all of their communication out. These can be bridges really between what they want to say and what they can say, and being able to just share. I mean, that's a big part of it, I think, is just finding ways to reflect, but not only share. Children want to form connections, and so these are ways that art can form connections. We're forming these connections when we're creating together, for sure, but we're also forming connections when we can take our artwork and we can say, look what I made. Look, this is me on a page. This is me in a book. This is my family. This is my life. These are the things I love. So that is a big part of sort of completing the art project. And maybe they're just sharing it with their other parent or their grandparent, or, you know, it can stay kind of small depending on, you know, your situation, what you want your child to share, what your child wants to share. But being able to reflect on their experiences, reflect on your internal feelings about things, put it on a page, and then be able to show it to other people is like a really powerful way of communicating and of utilizing art making. So, assuming there's no more questions, I'm going to go back to my slides to tell you about my final webinar so you can see it. So I have one more webinar going on next week. It's October 1st. It's going to be called Textile Tactile, Weaving Together. So I've done 2 so far on photographs, but this next one's going to be about playing with textures and just more hands-on work with your child. So this is great for children who have like sensory, they want to play, they're really responsive to like sensory experiences. There's a little bit of like more play involved, but we'll also create some really cool artworks that are very simple but look really great, and practicing motor skills, fine motor skills for your child, and also just continuing to be creative. So that will be happening next week. I hope that you gained something today about, you know, furthering your projects with photographs. Last week we talked about taking photographs and just ways to be creative, photographing each other, things like that. Feel free to go back and watch this webinar once it's the last webinar, once it's posted, because if you missed it, if you want, you know, ideas for taking photos, excuse me, there's some noise out my window. Yeah, so we talked about taking photos, we talked about printing our photos out, working with our photos. There's so much play you can do with photos with your child. Let me stop my share for a moment. Sorry about that. Oh, I haven't checked. So thank you very much, everybody. This concludes today's webinar. I hope you will join me next week, and I hope you print out your photos and you get to create with your child. Have fun with it. Don't forget to have fun. It's the most important part. And just, you know, explore and be playful. So I hope you will join me next week if you're available. Oh, and I forgot to do my thank yous. Forgive me. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who put this project together. And especially we're grateful to the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority for making this initiative a reality. And thank you all parents and families who joined us today, and for, you know, attending any of these webinars. You're benefiting yourself, benefiting your family just by getting creative and learning more. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and the rest of your week, and hope to see you next week. Thank you.